You're listening to The White Rabbit, conversations on the art of presenting in a rather noisy world. Your hosts are Matt Krause and Alper Rozanes. Matt helps leaders of international companies speak, write, and present with confidence. Alper is a communications trainer and a startup investor with a diverse portfolio of companies in Barcelona. If you like this podcast, please share it with friends and colleagues. Now, on to Matt and Alper for today's conversation.
Alper, today we have a guest on the podcast, Ebru Demirel. In fact, this is Ebru's second guest appearance on the podcast. She was on recently, and she talked about pitching an idea to a company board or an industry organization. So welcome back, Ebru. It's good to have you with us.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
In answering one of our questions for her, she mentioned something in passing, and that's what we wanted to follow up on today. In particular, she mentioned that more and more these days, she meets with the procurement departments of her company's potential clients. And that's a big issue for many of our listeners who are basically the heads of creative design agencies. And they often feel outgunned when negotiating with trained professional buyers. And so we wanted to hear more about Ebru's experience pitching to procurement in the hope that maybe we can learn something from it. But before we get into that, let me just do a quick review of who we are talking to for the benefit of those listeners who didn't catch the previous episode. Ebru runs a company that does international moving and expat relocation services, and her client roster is basically a list of the world's largest multinational companies. She's also an avid traveler, a long-distance runner, and a past board member of an international industry organization. Now, Ebru, before we get into today's topic, remind our listeners, Ebru, if they want to get in touch with you, how can they do it?
Email would be the easiest option, and my email address is ebru@asianakliyat.com.
Ebru@asianakliyat.com. Is that correct?
Correct, yeah.
So thank you, Ebru. And on to today's topic. Ebru, what are some of the things people need to know about pitching to procurement departments as opposed to pitching to other departments in an organization?
As we all know, this wasn't the case 20 years ago, or maybe started slowly. Since they are not the end service receiving party, procurement department is famous of only focusing on the numbers. They are price conscious, so none of us, when we try to sell our products or services, we don't want to really deal with the procurement department because the way they look at us as a commodity, and they just want to demonstrate how cheap they could manage to secure any service for their company. But yet, we as a service provider, we need to be explaining them the part that they don't know about. I mean, what if things go wrong? What would be the benefits for them to work with us? So this means that we need to build a relationship. In a way, we need to build trust. What makes us different? To me, the worst sales is the one that you get because you are the cheapest option. I think the successful sales means that you need to really demonstrate something or convince the procurement department so that they don't want to risk. Of course, I also find it different when you sell a product and when you sell services. In my line of work, we are selling services, which means that it may sound a little bit odd, but we are the product in a way, because every seller will gonna tell how great their services are.
Sure.
But during the whole process of selling or this communication, how we show up, how responsive we are, how knowledgeable we are, and it's not only about just trying to sell all the time, but also try to understand the expectation of her procurement. So we need to sell ourselves that we are trustworthy. That we are the way to go. This would be the summary that I can make with the.
You mentioned something that I wanted to ask about. You mentioned one of the issues is that you as the service provider, one of the issues that you want to talk about is what if things go wrong? So, and I find this very interesting because people hear the word procurement and they think, oh, just price. They just, I need to be the lowest cost provider. But instead, you mentioned this phrase, what if things go wrong? And so are you saying that, okay, if we're meeting with procurement, we also need to talk about what we're going to do when the inevitable bad thing happens? Is that what you're saying?
Absolutely, and we need to also tell them they don't necessarily know what the technical details are. They see it as for instance, for transportation, it's just simply from A to B. But we need to be telling them what happens if something goes wrong. I so I mean, yes, as you mentioned, procurement is all about figures and numbers. But for instance, when we move any high level assignee in any of the multinational company, imagine if their staff don't reach to destination on time, they won't be only dealing with the unhappy senior, but they will also be facing with lots of additional fees like hotel costs of a family, and anything that may come up in addition to that.
Which may increase the cost of the service much more than anticipated, I assume.
Absolutely, they end up paying much more, and this is the time when they are holding accountable why they chose any particular supplier. And
And
yeah,
okay, Matt, I have a question at this point.
Sure, go for it.
please go ahead.
Well, we talked about other factors rather than price affecting the quality of the service, but how do you bring those factors into prominence? For example, what are some of the less obvious but maybe even more critical aspects of the proposal other than the price itself?
Like I said, I will come back to the education, the procurement department. They may think that the price that we offer might be all, but we need to explain them what may go wrong and what they need to be careful while choosing a supplier based on the quotation they receive.
So in a sense, you have to show them a world beyond just numbers and information on a piece of paper. Maybe, and how do you do that? Do you talk about your past experiences? Do you give case studies? What would be some of the best course of action to follow in that case?
For instance, if it's international transportation and if the assignee is moving to any Latin American company, the customs formalities might be, not might be, obviously they are more complicated than European or Western world. Depending on the destination, if we may explain them how experienced we are in that particular destination with all the network we have, this might be a peace of mind for them. Like explaining the process in general, what the requirements are, and also the agents, explaining the associations we are linked to and how we have built those relationships. I think this will do definitely, because like I said, they have a internal policy to follow as a procurement department. They have to demonstrate that they are saving money, but we need to be, as a service provider, explain them that okay, our price may not be the cheapest one, but risk-wise, we guarantee this, we guarantee that, with all the experience we have. Like you mentioned, maybe some references, clients that they may take their attention. Because I've experienced number of times. Yes, sometimes procurement departments asks when there is an RFP, they of course try to negotiate further. They say that you need to reduce your rate, and there were times that I noticed that the reduction they're expecting is tiny little, sometimes even cents, not even a dollar. Of course, it's the per unit price.
Yes.
But we when we try to sell our services, we think that when they ask for a reduction, I think procurement department, they have to show that they get a reduction. This is something that they need to show it for sure.
It's like something to check.
Exactly. So the point is to create an opportunity for the procurement department to come back to us asking for a reduction.
Mhm.
And this can only be done by building trust.
Yeah.
Show them how good we are so that they don't want to risk and working with some cheaper options.
I like what you said, and I think it looks like, well, there are always ways to cut costs. I mean, you can cancel all your insurance policies and then you'll spend less money. But what if disaster strikes? Then the cost of it would be much, much higher than not going with insurance in the first place.
Absolutely right. And we as an individual, we make choices every day. And in the world we are living, everybody has lots of choices. The competition is much higher than it used to be.
Hmm.
And even in our, in our daily life, we just want to make sure that we do the right choice. And it is not only, of course, we want to buy it as cheap as possible, but at the same time, we are all experienced enough to know the consequences just by choosing, just by the price.
Yeah. Have you heard of the expression, I'm not rich enough to buy cheap?
Absolutely.
I love that.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm not sure if that's the expression word by word. I hope I'm not slaughtering it, but you get the idea.
And you have this saying almost in every language, I think, in every culture.
Probably, yeah. Yeah.
Alper, I have a question for Ebru. Do you mind if I jump in?
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Ebru, you mentioned before we started the recording, you mentioned that the people who work in procurement, they have managers that they report to, bosses that they report to. And then the conversation kind of got cut off and we didn't get to dive deeper into that. So I'm wondering, what did you mean by that? The people that are across the table from you have their own bosses and their own managers. What did you mean by that?
Of course, I'm not. I think procurement people go through a very good training for
Uh-huh.
negotiating, so they squeeze you. I don't want to offend of procurement people,
Sure.
and they must have some targets. Mine, I mean, I'm always talking with the people who are in the industry. They might be in different countries, but we all have the common sense that procurement people, they need to demonstrate their management how much they make savings to their company,
Uh-huh.
and of course how it is more for the HR departments, like less noise means everything is working well, no
Sure.
complaints.
Uh-huh.
So I think, like I said, I mean, we are helping mainly expatriates when they move in and out Turkey. And those people have the power to change things. If something goes wrong in their personal household goods belongings move with their family, this can be a very disastrous situation. Because emotions are involved. The family may not be willing to move. So if they feel that procurement just chose the supplier based on the price, they may make their life quite difficult. So that's why I always think that yes, procurement departments, they need to show that they are acting according to company's economical benefits, but they also need to make sure that the company is experienced and competent to offer a good service, to high quality service.
But I have a follow-up question.
Sure, go for it.
Ebru, in your case, if something goes wrong with the service, at least from the ones that you hear from the industry, does it come back to questioning the procurement process?
This part I'm not sure of. They will definitely question us, but it will result us losing the account. So it means that whatever is chosen by the procurement account department is replaced by another one, or they go through another process to recruit a new supplier.
So as a procurement person, should I also think about potential future risks when choosing which company to work with, risks that may come back to me as the person making that decision?
I think so, because it's not only service quality of service, but also compliance wise. In today's world, there are many things. I mean, sometimes it surprises me that some procurement departments only focusing on the price, like they. One way or another, we find out that when we give a quotation, we find out that a company with one man show can also make this offer. And then I wonder, what about all the compliance, data privacy? So I think it is procurement department's responsibility to make sure that they check the boxes. But some procurement, unfortunately, only focus on pure pricing.
Okay.
We'll need to.
I have more questions, but I'm going to leave the floor to Matt.
Yeah, we'll need to wrap up in a few moments, but I just wanted to comment on something that you said, Ebru. You mentioned that sometimes procurement asks for a discount. And when we hear the word discount, we think, oh my, they want me to take like a third or a half off of my price, and I'm going to lose my shirt on this one. And you're saying, well, sometimes when they ask for a discount, they're just thinking about a really small sliver, like maybe just a couple cents. I think that's a fascinating perspective that we need to keep in mind.
Mm-hmm.
Honestly, I could figure out years after, like you just explained. Whenever they ask for a reduction, I was so scared. It's already low. What am I going to do? Then we noticed it just is, small stuff they wanted, just to show that they made a negotiation and gain extra reduction.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like an item on Excel, discount acquired, check, put a tick mark next to it and move on.
And it's so easy for us to forget that and to fall into the black hole of, oh my God, I've got to cut my price in half.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So anyway, so we do need to wrap it up for today. So I just wanted to thank you again for joining us on the podcast, Ebru. And Alper, I will see you next week then.
You too. Bye-bye.
Thank you. You too. Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to The White Rabbit with Matt Krause and Alper Rozanes. You can subscribe to the podcast on Spotify, iTunes, or through your favorite feed.